This is Dan Rogers, your host on We the People Town Square, coming to you from the center of the universe, the high plains of Texas, near the headwaters of the Prairie Dog Town Fork of the Red River. Today is January the 5th, 2024. Today we're here with Caroline Fairley, who's running for State Representative District 87.
Yes, sir.
Caroline, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I see you're recovering from a bad cold.
I am. Excuse me if I cough a little. I'm trying to keep back coughing, so.
But that doesn't slow you down. You're still out running hard.
Still out running hard. No breaks, no stops.
So let's tell the voters of District 87 why you chose to jump into this race.
So, Dan, that's a good question. I worked on the campaign with Ronnie Jackson. Born and raised here in Amarillo, Texas. Went to college, graduated. Worked on Ronnie Jackson's campaign. Whenever he won, he offered me a job in D.C. I moved to D.C., finished that up, moved back to Texas, and worked here in healthcare and medical bills, etc. Led a team. And when the seat opened up, really I began thinking and praying if this is something I should do. And ultimately, I probably had hundreds of conversations with people all over, local, state, federal, to really understand what does this job look like. And really, the most important question I asked was, does it matter? Like, can I be effective? Can I make a difference? And ultimately, the more I learned about it, the more excited I got. And ultimately said, I have to do this. I can't not run because I believe we have to protect our conservative values. We have to make sure that we keep government small, we cut taxes. And the other part of that is we don't want to just protect these values. We want to promote them all over Texas. And we want to make sure that we don't want to just keep them in the 87th district. We want all of Texas to know this is how we live conservatively, and life is just better lived this way. And so I ultimately said, I'm going to step up and run and step aside from where my business career was going.
So you said you want to make a difference. If you would run if you could make a difference. Mm-hmm. So how do you plan on making a difference as a state representative?
So I think that, we need leaders in Austin who aren't sold out to the money and the power, ultimately. We need leaders that are willing to make a stand when it counts and make sure that we have real conservatives, not just people who say they're conservative and act that way. And we need people who are really grounded in these values. And for me, really, it's my faith. That's what guides the way I think and act. And that's what we need in Austin in order to make a difference. People who are truly grounded, not sold out to everybody in Austin.
Well, we have a lot of people that run for political office and they say the right things. They tell everybody they're conservative. Mm-hmm. But once they get elected, they change. Will you change?
Nope.
And how can you explain to the voters why you won't change, but everybody else seems to?
Yeah. So you're right. A lot of people change when they get to Austin. And that was, when I decided to run, that was kind of a fear of mine, is saying, look, if I can't risk my faith and my values if I'm going to lose it in Austin. So I thought a lot about that. Like, you're right. All these people lose how they think, act. They, get power hungry, etc. And in thinking through that, there are a couple things. One, you have to have people around you who can kind of call you out and say, Caroline, you're off. Like, you're going a little sideways on this. And so I feel thankful that I've had, I have people around me that will speak honestly to me, despite what I think or feel. And I think that accountability system is really important. And the other part of it is that, when you remember the goal of why you're in Austin, which is to serve the people, to represent the people, and you're rooted, for me, it's my faith, like, it's a lot harder to get distracted because you keep in perspective and you don't have the blinders of it's about me, it's about the money, it's about the power. And so I think really the response in saying I'm not going to sell out is, one, making sure that I have accountability, making sure that I'm remembering the reason that I'm there, which I think the part of accountability is my faith, and making sure I don't have those blinders. And then really just making sure that I remember the true reason why I'm there. It's about serving the people.
So you want to represent the people, not rule them.
Yes.
So what do you think of what's the biggest issue facing District 87?
Am I allowed to say a couple?
Sure.
Is that allowed? I, in meeting, really, I've been to almost all of the counties. I've traveled over 4,000 miles to really meet with the people and the constituents in the 87th district. And what I'm hearing and seeing are the top, really 3 issues is border, rural healthcare, and water. Those are the top 3.
So how would you solve the border crisis?
So, to kind of frame where we're at with the border, in this last 2023 year, we'll have had over 2.5 million illegal immigrants. We have about over 150 terrorists from the FBI terror watch list in our country. And so this isn't just like a border, it's a total national crisis. And if we allow for it to be open, the next generation is going to pay. And so when we talk about solutions around the border, it's not going to just be one thing is going to fix the border. So I think there's several things that we can do. First of all, I think we should build the wall. I think that we have to make sure that we invest in the buoys and buoy barriers. And then I think that we have to invest in a highly funded and sophisticated border patrol. And last thing is we have to win in D.C. We have to win Republican in D.C., in the House, in the Senate. We have to get Republicans who are leading our country. But, really, when we look at the border and we see that we had over 2.5 million illegal immigrants, it's alarms going on in my head because I care about when I raise my kids here and my hopefully future grandkids here, I want it to be safe. I want it to be conservative. And we allow illegal immigrants coming across. We're allowing for really the future of Texas to not be safe. And so I care so much about being proud about where we live and protecting our citizens. A lawmaker's first job is to make sure they protect their citizens. And having an open border is not doing that.
So is this a federal issue or a state issue?
Right now, it's a federal issue. But the thing is the federal government current administration is not doing their job. So Texas is having to step up and figure out the solution.
And you believe Texas has the authority to do that?
It's an uphill battle. Really, it's an uphill battle. The federal government's not stepping up and doing their job.
So another one of the issues was water, right? What are the concerns about water?
So when we look at water, the reality is that we're running out of it. The Ogallala Aquifer is not replenishing as quickly as we're using it. And so there's a couple givens that I believe in when we talk about this water discussion and solutions for it is first thing being private property rights. We have to protect private property rights. The second one being local control. Now, I've traveled all over the district and I've met with these farmers and these ranchers and I sat down with one farmer, and he's a 4th generation farmer. And we were talking about water and solutions and what do we do to fix this and what are the things, that we can help with. And, he had told me, Caroline, I don't know if my future kids or grandkids are going to be able to farm because of the water issue. And so when you sit down with these people and you really get to know the people in your district, these stories become very impactful and frankly motivate me even more to defend them and to advocate for them. Because these farmers and ranchers and irrigators, they have dedicated their lives to agriculture and for their families to grow up there. And, we've got to make sure that we're advocating for that. So when it comes to solutions to that, there's a couple things. When I've been looking at the water discussion that I think we should look into is investing in water in desalination technology. I think we have a little over 50 plants, but they're very limited. So we need to make sure that we're investing in desalination technology. The second thing being is conservation. And when I say conservation, I don't mean we can't use water. I just mean we need to be more efficient and mindful in the way we do that. And there's different ways we can do that, whether it's municipal conservation, it's agricultural conservation, making sure we're supporting the farmers and ranchers to be able to be more efficient in the way they use their water, not put legalities and tell them how to do it, but support them. And so, but really at the root, private property rights and local control are very, very important around the water discussion. But Texas, shame on Texas, we can't figure it out because we have the wealth and we have the time to do it.
So what happens to water? Can you destroy water?
Destroy it. Will you elaborate on that?
Well, water's H2O, hydrogen and oxygen. How can you destroy water? How can you, I guess what I'm saying is, how can we run out of water? Doesn't it just move around?
Well, right now, when we look at water, like, the Ogallala Aquifer is not replenishing as quickly, but we have water. We have ocean water, we have brackish water, we have groundwater. The issue is that it is not usable, drinkable water. And that's when I talked about the desalination technology. It takes the salt out of the water so that it is usable and drinkable.
Are you familiar with the hydrologic cycle?
I'm not.
That's where water comes down as rain,
Mm-hmm.
and then it goes into the soil, or I don't think they even know where the Ogallala is recharged from. Right?
Okay.
That's just one aquifer.
Yeah.
Underneath that, you have a couple more aquifers. They're just really deep. So it costs more to go get it.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody wants to spend any money. But anyway, the hydrologic cycle, so moisture evaporates into the atmosphere, comes down as snow, rain, liquid, and then it turns back into a gas and goes back up, and then some of it goes into the ground, and the groundwater, we believe, gets recharged there, and that process takes basically 100 years. Right?
Oh.
So the water that you're drinking out of that bottle is probably a minimum of 100 years old.
Interesting. Fascinating.
So, in other words, it moves around, but you cannot destroy water. It's in everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it may move around, but you can't run out of it. That's my point.
Yeah.
So we've taken a lot of land that used to be pasture, and we farm it now, and they irrigate it. So that's sucking moisture out of the aquifers to water the plants.
Mm.
But then that evaporates back up into the atmosphere and comes back down as rain and recharges the rivers and the lakes and that sort of thing. And some of it goes on back down into the ground. And 100 years from now, it'll show up in an aquifer. So my point is,
Yeah.
I think there's we allow people to tell us things that I'm not sure are true.
Mm. Okay.
So I guess I'm a little bit skeptical.
Well, it's healthy to be a little skeptical.
I'm saying
whenever
there's
it's-
hope because you can't destroy water.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So,
And like you said, we do have, water. It's about making sure it's usable, drinkable, and, so.
well, to me, when you go up around the northern part of the district where they're pumping up around Spearman and Hansford County, and they're pumping that water out, and the amount of water they're pumping out is measured in acre feet.
Mhm.
Tremendous amounts of water, but yet we still have plenty.
Yeah.
And they've
Well,
been
you make
doing
a
it
very
for
good point.
50 years, right?
Yeah. Well, and we're not going to, we're not running out of water in the next 2-3 years. That's 100% true. I agree with that. Yeah.
So maybe they need to look at raising some different crops or be a
Uh-huh.
little more efficient with it. But, it's their land, it's their business. And if they run out of water, it's going to harm them.
It is. Yeah.
So, but I guess the question is, should it be the government's role to restrict people from using their own water that they own or not?
Mm-hmm. Which goes back to the protecting private property rights and local control.
Right.
We don't need the government to come in and create more legalities and regulations on these farmers and ranchers.
And what was another one of the issues?
Rural healthcare.
Healthcare. What's your what do you think the main concern about rural healthcare is?
Mm-hmm. So when we look at, rural healthcare in these areas, the main issue is staffing. It's not enough doctors and nurses, and And so really the conversation needs to be, how do we get these doctors and nurses to be in these rural areas and support them, you know? I know that there was a bill that was passed to help allocate scholarships for nurses, and we need to probably just keep an eye on that to make sure if it's enough funding and if there's other strategic ways that we can help with that. The other concern that I see with rural healthcare is EMS and first responders. Like, you know, a lot of them are volunteer. And, you know, I've gone out to, I think it was in Stratford or somewhere around there, and a lot of them are just volunteer, EMS and first responders. And so, which is amazing that they're willing to be involved in the community, but we need to make sure that we are supporting and helping them to help these rural areas. I work in healthcare, so I have this personal passion about it. Like I've worked with sophisticated hospital systems and CFOs about, you know, settling a rate for a kiddo that has cancer. And so when it comes to healthcare and mamas having babies and little kiddos, you know, being able to have access to good doctors, I care about that a lot. So I really think the conversation is, how do we help support the rural areas? How to make sure there's enough funding in supporting the EMS and first responders. And I've been talking with the policemen and firemen about, what does that look like? What do we need to do to make sure we get people engaged and support them?
So another couple of the issues I think that people have been talking about a lot are property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people want to see those go away. What do you think about property taxes, and do you have any opinions?
So we all know property taxes are too high. Like, I think we would all agree we want to lower property taxes. I think when it comes to government's role in that is that we need to make sure that we, you know, keep putting pressure and keeping cities accountable for how high they can raise those taxes, and making sure that we have those caps to make sure that we don't, you know, just skyrocket property taxes, because we want to keep them low.
So you think the state should regulate the
I think
counties and the cities and restrict them from being able to raise revenue?
I think there's a conversation about what kind of regulations they look like, to make sure in the cities, in the school districts and et cetera, you know, we just keep those to a minimum and be mindful of that.
Why don't we just eliminate property taxes?
I think that's a great idea.
Well, to me, you could eliminate property taxes and go to a sales tax on real estate. Like when you buy a vehicle or a truck or a piece of equipment, you pay a sales tax. And you're done, right? Why can't we do that with real estate? And then you own your property. For instance, if I have, let's just take $100,000 in a New York bank, or $1 million or any bank.
Yeah.
Right. If I have that laying there in cash, I don't get charged tax by the county or the city or the school districts or anybody else. But if I invest in Texas and produce jobs and build a building, they come and tax my wealth for my investment. Is that fair?
No, I think you have a really good point there.
I just don't understand why we wouldn't treat everything the same. And then the legislators could appropriate money to the schools based on students, based on the child, not the school. Because it should be about the students.
It's about the students. Yeah.
Not the administrators or the building.
Yeah. No,
and then that would be fair to everybody.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
And then they live within that amount of money. And if they can't, I think if you did that, you would see a lot more efficiency and less waste and top-heavy administrative and bureaucracy. Because there was a philosopher, Arendt, that called it the soft tyranny of bureaucracy.
Okay.
Right. Bureaucracy kills everything. It destroyed the Soviet Union. Right. It's bureaucracy. And we're drifting that way because it's just the natural order of government, right? It grows and grows until it busts. So it will keep growing until we cut off the money, right? So how do we cut off the money?
I think you have a good point there. Yeah.
So let's say you get elected, and what is the first thing you plan on doing as a new state rep for District 87?
Advocating for those three things I just mentioned: border, rural healthcare, water.
Border, water, and healthcare. Very good. So do you have any specific proposals you plan on proposing once you get elected to solve those three issues?
Specific legislation. Really what we talked about just a little bit ago, the practical things and solutions, whether it's water and desalination technology, or it's border and those several things that we can do to help make sure we have limitations on immigrants walking across, rural healthcare, whether it's, what I talked about with making sure that we have incentivized, doctors and nurses coming, and we support our first responders in EMS.
Okay, you got what, three opponents in the race?
3 opponents, yes.
So, let's tell the voters why they should choose you over your 3 opponents.
So, Dan, there's a few things. First one being my work ethic. Like I have now traveled over 4,000 miles. I've knocked on over 200 doors. I've had over 250 personal meetings with different folks all over the district. I've met and done a lot of school tours, etc. Like I am in with the people. And, a representative is not an effective representative if they don't have relationships with the people in their district. And if they're not meeting with people and listening to their concerns, like when I go in and I meet with the Farm Bureau guy and say, hey, these are the things I'm learning about water. Well, when he gives me his thoughts, I'm just sharp and better. And I will not be an effective representative if I do not have relationships with people all in the different areas, whether it's in Stratford or Dumas or Perryton or Amarillo or the firemen or policemen. Like, I won't be effective. And so I have been working so hard the last 2 months, and I will continue to work hard to be sure I have relationships with those people where they can pick up the phone and call me, and I will listen to them and advocate for them, because that is the role of a representative. Second part is my age. I have time and I have energy to commit to this. I believe that when you look, at how hard I worked and really my experience, it's a huge asset. Like I worked in DC with Ronnie Jackson. I saw firsthand how politics works. I'm not naive to how it works. I work in healthcare. I've negotiated with very sophisticated hospital systems where you have to know when to push and pull back and negotiate. And if you can't do that in Austin, if you can't convince people why your bill should be the one people should vote on, you're not going to be effective. And the last thing I really want to hit on is I mentioned this earlier, but my age. I am young, but my experience has prepared me for this job. And also, when you look at our nation's history, young leadership, it's an American tradition. Betsy Ross was my age when she made the first flag. William B. Travis, he was 26, a lieutenant colonel at the Alamo. Alexander Hamilton was only 21 when he signed the Declaration of Independence. And look, Alexander Hamilton was this poor orphan boy, nobody. And now his legacy will live on forever. And thank heavens our founding fathers didn't look at Alexander Hamilton and say, hold on, boy, wait your turn, you're too young. And look, I'm no Alexander Hamilton, but his young leadership is inspiring. Like, it is time for people from my generation to raise their hand and step up and say, yep, I'm going to go and promote and protect these values because I'm here for the next 30, 40 years. And I have energy and passion and new ideas. And so I really think that's a strong differentiation between me and my opponents.
Oh, very good. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the voters before we wrap it up?
I'm trying to think. I really, the thing I care about the voters knowing is I care about their needs. Like, it's not about me. It's about listening and having relationships, and I care about being an advocate for their kids and their grandchildren, and really for the future of Texas, because these values we believe in our faith, they're the only hope for the future of Texas.
One thing that I've noticed going to some events,
Mhm.
of course, this is more at the federal level, but I went to the one at Jody Arrington
Oh
put on
yes.
in Canyon, and my cowboy and I went, stood in the back of the room, and listened. And what struck me was that every single person that asked a question was associated with a group, an NGO, or a PAC, or some sort of group that represented a special interest.
Hmm.
There was not one single real farmer, rancher, producer ask any questions.
Interesting.
They all wanted more money for their group. And I think that's the problem.
Mm. Yep.
It's all about special interests, and nobody's talking to the real voter. So, do you
I'm
have
right
any?
with you.
Do you have any suggestions on how to stop that? And I know why, because they're the ones giving the campaign donations. So then the bill comes out, and then they give them back money.
Mm-hmm.
That's corruption, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what's killed every Republican history.
Yeah. Well,
Or-
and they let money get to their head, and it's power. And
Yeah.
I don't know if there's an exact, hey, this is the answer to resolve that. What I do know is that means we have to elect officials who we know their heart is in it for the right reason. That's really it. We have to be smart in the way we really assess our, folks who are running for office and say, look, are you really for the people? Do you really have conservative values? Are you authentic in yourself and you're working hard? Like, we got to look at those traits and say, hey, and sometimes, you're like, is it the lesser of two evils? Like, it's not always the best option, but I really think that we've got to just be mindful of the way, we're electing officials and that's really why I care about running, is that those things are true. Like, my heart is in it, and I care about being authentic and real and working hard.
Well, to me, it's a simple thing we could do to fix that. If you don't vote in a district, you should not be able to contribute a penny, nor even work on the campaign. And there should be no PACs and no NGOs. I don't believe that they're necessary. I think it's all smoke and mirrors and influence peddling, and it's wrong. Yeah. It should be about the individual voter, and that's it.
It should.
And if you're an individual voter in District 87 and you want to donate $1 million to Caroline Fairley's campaign, you should be able to do it. But if you're a PAC out of Austin or North Carolina, you shouldn't be able to give a penny because you can't vote for her. Mm-hmm. And I think that would solve a lot of problems. You could do that. Everybody's in the federal, at the presidential race, but if you're in a congressional district, you have to be in that congressional district to contribute. No PACs, nothing else, only money coming from individuals who can vote, and be done. Yeah. That would solve a lot of problems. Mm-hmm. Because people that live in that district then would have an interest in that district, rather than trying to buy influence.
I haven't heard that idea yet, so I'm glad you shared.
I have lots of ideas.
You have lots of ideas, Dan.
But I don't know if anybody else likes them. I think they're kind of good, some of them. I've been working on this property tax thing for a long time, and it's starting to bubble up, and they're getting there, but they always want to. There's so much money in these established systems, and so many different people are making so much money with the current system that makes it very difficult to change anything, because nobody wants to actually go out and produce something. They want to make money off the system, and that doesn't produce anything, and that harms Texas, right? People need to be in productive capacity, making things, producing things, and creating things, instead of being part of a bureaucratic problem. And so we don't want to see the state grow. government wise. We want it to shrink.
Shrink. Yep.
And about the only way I know to make something shrink, it's like a cancer, is you take away its food supply, which is money. All right. Well, do you have a website? How do people get a hold of you and learn more about you? Do you have a website?
I do. I have a Facebook, Carolyn Fairley for Texas, website, fairleyfortexas.com. You can give online and donate. I have on my website, there's a way you can get signs, contact if you have questions. I am always available to listen and understand, and I have my endorsements on there from, Abbott, Kim Paxton, Ted Cruz, Cole Stanley, Ronnie Jackson, all on there, so you can look at who's involved in my campaign. Investing and donating online is really helpful. So,
well, the main endorsement that's going to matter is the individual voter, right?
Those people who vote, that's who I need.
So you have to go out and earn their vote.
I do.
We commend you for having the courage to stand up and run for public office, because I know that takes a lot of courage and it's not easy. So we want to commend you for having that courage, and good luck out there on the campaign.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much for having me.